There we go. So we are live. So welcome to another episode of Leadership in 15. So this is the fourth episode. Those of you that have joined us, hopefully you know who I am. But just in case, as the screen says, I'm Jackie Turner. I'm the founder of Turner Corner Learning Solutions, but also more recently the Leadership Academy as well. But I'm really excited to be joined by my guest today, one of my good connections, Dan. So Dan, before we go into the conversation, would you like to just share a little bit about yourself with whoever's joined us?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I'm Dan Kilty. I've had an interesting mix of careers and life so far, and I exacerbate that so far. There's lots more still to come. So in terms of professionally, I worked for various different insurance companies as a head of operations, as a leader in the operations field. Most recently, I worked for Munich Re and then Pension Insurance Corporation. In parallel to that, I've also done various other things in my life. So along the way, I got my SEMA qualification and have done lots of volunteering for SEMA, taken lots of leadership roles within sort of the SEMA volunteer network, done my MBA at Henley along the way, and also had other weird experiences, such as I took a year out to sail around the world, which is not something which most people will come across. So it's a real mix of experiences along my journey.
Fantastic, and it's great to have somebody with your wealth of experience joining me in this Leadership in 15. So we are going to try and keep the conversation to around 50 minutes. If you have joined us live, just say a quick hello in the comments, because otherwise we won't know that you're here. And of course, we do welcome any questions as well. And even if we don't have the time in the 15 minutes to answer all those questions, we'll definitely will after the session itself, because the recording gets uploaded onto the LinkedIn page as well. So we'll be able to see the questions and respond to them afterwards if we need to. But yeah, don't be afraid to say a quick hello in the comments, just so that we know that you're here with us. But of course, we're here to talk about leadership. That's why it's called Leadership in 15, and particularly a topic that I know we're both very passionate about, Dan, which is coaching. But I really wanted to start the conversation with something that I know, in my experience, many leaders struggle with, is delegating. Delegation, involves often a lot of coaching support as well. So I'd love to know your thoughts in terms of the importance of delegating when you're a leader, and the part that coaching can play in that.
Well, absolutely. Well, I think firstly, I'd kind of say, my leadership style and my sense of leadership has been a kind of along a journey itself. I think when I first started out, you kind of think command and control, do this, do that, do the other. But quite soon you realize that doesn't really work that well in many, many situations. And this is where I think the coaching and the humility of coaching comes to the fore. I was fortunate enough 10 years ago to have done an internal coaching course, and it really kind of highlighted that actually some of the things I was doing were very much along the coaching line of things rather than anything else. It was quite useful to add texture and add flavor to that approach. In terms of delegating, I think the big challenge is knowing that you're handing it to someone outside your control, and that therefore they're not going to do it how you would do it. But that's okay. That's all right. Sometimes they'll do it a bit better. Sometimes they'll do it a little bit worse. Who knows? It's a relatively subjective thing. But I think the key thing is to make sure that you delegate properly, that you know that, if you really, really want it done in a particular way, delegate it and give the person all the instruction that they need to do it in that particular way. But most of the time, you probably don't know quite exactly what you want either. You've got a general direction of travel. Delegate that out to that person. Let them run with it. And you know what? Often they'll amaze you by what they deliver. And it's really, really powerful. I suppose the other aspect of delegation, which is really, really important, and again, is just really come to the fore in my head and in my ways of thinking, is you yourself can't do it all. you need to delegate. And the really powerful thing about delegation is the way in which it's a whole accumulator and amplifier of work, but yeah, it's challenging, but accept that it won't be done quite how you want to do it, but that's okay. Good enough is good enough.
It absolutely is. And it's a struggle I still have sometimes being a business owner. I try and do everything myself. And recently my schedule has just got so busy. I've had to sort of, decide, I'm going to need some support and help and delegate, etc. And I've been working with somebody that has been a godsend to me over the last couple of months. But yeah, it's so important, isn't it, to get comfortable with letting go of full control and empowering somebody else, developing their confidence, developing their skills through that sort of art of delegation. We've got Catherine Farrell with us at the moment. I don't know if you know Catherine, Dan, but she said a quick hello to us. So thank you, Catherine, for joining us today. And of course, if you do have any questions, we're more than happy to try and answer those as well. In terms of, I guess this is still a big part of delegation and doing it correctly. The importance of good communication in leadership. What's your sort of thoughts about, some of the things that you've learned along your career in terms of the art of good communication and what some of the pitfalls might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think communication is, it seems trite to say communication is absolutely vital, but it is absolutely vital. But I think it's really, really important and also quite empowering to think about communication in terms of what it actually means to the other person, to put yourself in the shoes of the recipient. You may say something, oh, that's blue. And they may hear, oh, that's blue. But how they interpret that may be slightly different. We all interpret based upon our own background, experiences, the whole thing along the way. And I think it's really, really important to be clear about communication, to be clear about what you're wanting them to say. And one of the things which I actually picked up from counselling, which is not from counselling, from coaching, sorry, which was a really good asset, is the idea of repeating things. So getting people to, if you communicate to them, sort of saying, well, what do you mean by that? And listening to them and listening to what they said. The other one, which I'm also going to put in here, is a bit around structuring communication. And it's really that idea of, we kind of are a bit programmed to start at the beginning and then move on to the middle and then get to the end. And if you muddle that around by starting at the end, jumping around, the recipient loses the flow. So make it easy for them. Put yourself in the shoes of the recipient of what you're trying to communicate. Think about what's important to them, and how they're also going to interpret it. I had one particular really good experience when about 15 years ago in my career, where I spent 2 years going to Poland to set up Prudential in Poland. And that was a real eye-opener in terms of that communication and interpretation, because I was speaking to people who English wasn't their first language. And it meant that I had to learn to think about it, think about what they're hearing, listen to them coming back with things, and then tweak my message. If it wasn't quite what I wanted, you tweak your message. You take a slightly different, do it this way. Okay, well, how about if you think about it this way, or think about it that way, so that you're really getting your message across of what it is you're trying to convey.
That's so important. I think a couple of points you made there in terms of checking somebody else's interpretation and understanding of what you've said, because that's the only way you can be 100% certain of what they've heard and what they've interpreted. And I talk about this often when I'm doing any sort of leadership training that involves around communication, delegating. that sort of, typical question, or do you understand? And most people will just go, yes, because A, they think they do, or B, they don't want to sound silly by saying, no, actually, I don't quite understand what you've just said. And that can be easily rectified, can't it? Just by asking that person to repeat back to you, to summarize back their understanding of the instructions of what you've asked them to do. Really gives that sort of level of depth of understanding of, yes, have they really interpreted? Have they understood? Or actually, is there still a conversation to be had to make sure that what you're asking somebody to do, they absolutely understand specifics in terms of what that looks like. But yeah, I found so many leaders over my career, will just throw in that, is that okay, or do you understand? And then
we're all too embarrassed to say no, or we actually think we did understand, and then we find out later that we didn't.
Yeah, and then that's the frustrating thing is then you don't get the result that you thought you wanted.
Exactly.
And then suddenly you think, oh, well, there's no point in delegating that again, is it? Because I didn't get the result that I wanted. But actually, it's not that person's fault, potentially. It's the way in which the leaders communicated or checked that person's interpretation. We've got John Pearson with us as well. John's a good mate of mine and very good connections. So really good to have you with us as well, John. And welcome any of your questions or thoughts around this. You also mentioned, Dan, about the importance of listening when you were talking about communication. And I know we've talked about this, the art of listening, particularly when you are coaching somebody. And what do you see are the biggest pitfalls, or sometimes the biggest barriers around listening? And and I know, because we've talked about it, some of the things that we all do, it's not always easy to do, but what would you say is good listening when it comes to coaching somebody?
Yeah, absolutely, and you're absolutely right, and I think this is a real challenge, because our kind of default is to half listen. I want a better, we kind of hear what people say, but I don't know, we might be thinking about, oh, quite fancy a cup of coffee, or maybe I'll have a drink of water, or we might be thinking about, what am I going to say next? And so there's an element of, you're kind of hearing, but you're not hearing. One of the things which I picked up from coaching and have tried to apply, and I say tried because it's difficult, is to actually stop yourself from thinking about what you're going to say next and actually listen to what they're saying, to stop your brain from worrying and kind of trying to interpret, and just listen. You can just hear their words, absorb their words, contemplate them. You don't need to add anything. You don't need to do anything else. And there's an element, I suppose, of almost humility in it, in understanding that they have something important to say. So you're going to listen to them.
Absolutely.
And you're not going to try and overinterpret.
I was just going to say there, John. It's also Dan even. I will explain to my audience. I started the day with a migraine this morning. I did warn Dan beforehand. What comes out of my mouth may not necessarily make any sense. My apologies, Dan. But yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of how powerful that slowing the process down is, and that active listening, and not thinking about your next question while the other person is still answering and responding to your previous question. Giving yourself that time, as you've just described there, Dan, in terms of really digesting what that person has said, interpreting what that person has said, and doing that sort of thinking process about what you want to ask next, only when they have finished, really is powerful, because it shows that person respect. It shows that person that actually you are taking your time to really think about what they've just said, and they can see that. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And it goes so much more than that as well. By showing that person that respect, and and also, that you value what they are saying. It really encourages people. And again, it's that idea of one of the arts of leadership, I suppose, is getting the best out of the people that you're working with or liaising with for whatever reason. And that level of respect gives them that sense of, I value what you are bringing to the table, and I am going to give you my time and really, really listen to you. But yeah, it's so important.
It absolutely is, and as I say, it's a skill, and it's a skill that we can keep developing.
Whilst it's a skill, it's also something you can practice. Something which is really worthwhile doing. Find yourself in a meeting and just try and stop your brain and go, actually, do you know what? For the next 5 minutes, I'm going to genuinely listen to what this person is saying. I'm not going to be thinking about, I've got another email, or, I need to respond to this, or what are we going to have for dinner tonight? How am I going to get home? All those other activities your brain's going, or is this really relevant to me? I'm moving on. I'm thinking about the next topic on the agenda. Stop and actually just think, just listen and properly listen. And it's a skill that you can build, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose there's that idea of the brain as a muscle in the same way as a physical muscle. And if you exercise with it in that kind of way, you get better at it.
Yeah, and switching off any of those distractions, pop-ups that come up on your phone or your is another thing I think that can act as a distraction. I want to quickly, before we sort of summarize some of the key points of our chat today, Dan, one thing I know, because you started off by saying about your level of experience in leadership and the different roles, etc., that you've had, how important it is for leaders to welcome and adapt to different transitions in terms of leadership.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is something I've always felt really strongly about. I think anyone who comes into your sphere of leadership, they're on their own journey themselves. They'll come in for a while, you'll touch their lives, and they'll move on. And that's okay. We're all kind of doing this strange crisscrossy thing whereby our paths will cross with people. We might see them again a few years later, we might not. It doesn't matter. But you've got that small window of opportunity where you can really A, help that person, B, help yourself, and really make an impact. And so that idea of kind of knowing that in an employment situation, you might have someone for a year, you might have someone for 2 years before they move on, and letting them move on graciously, with a good luck and a good fortune and bon chance, whatever you want to do it, is really, really positive, both in terms of just motivating the team, because you've also got the rest of the team to think about. And if they can see how you're treating that one individual, that you're kind of going, brilliant, you've come here, you've done a fantastic job, you're on to your next exciting opportunity, brilliant, I'm fully behind you. You set flight and pledge, or whatever, however you want to describe it, spread your wings and fly away, is a kind of great attitude and mindset to have in terms of these things.
I absolutely love that. And of course, we never forget those great leaders, those inspiring leaders in our career, and the impact that they had on us either. I just want to, before we finish off, just looking at some of the comments. So Catherine has agreed listening is vital. Couldn't agree with you more, Catherine. And John has said there's so much value in taking that step back and asking those guided questions to ensure that every conversation has a development opportunity attached to it. helping people get that ownership and accountability and freeing up time for us to focus on other areas too. Couldn't agree with you more, John. Very well said. Before we finish off, Dan, I could certainly carry on this conversation for much longer, but just to give our audience perhaps 2 or 3 specific actions, takeaways that you think would be of most value to them from the chat that we've had, what would they be?
Okay, so I think the first thing is probably to think about the fact that these particular leadership skills are skills you have in your everyday life. They're not special, but they are really important. Clever delegate, sensible and smart delegation, accepting that in giving something away, you are losing control of it, but that's okay. Good communication, both in terms of how someone's going to interpret it, and also in terms of you listening and receiving what they're saying in a gracious and respectful manner to show that you value their input, just puts the whole thing on a positive trajectory. And then again, just being gracious in terms of your team, in terms of those people who are following you for that period of time, of accepting that they won't be there forever. They're not there as your servant. They're on their own path. They're on their own journey. And if you can give them a helping hand along the way and deliver the project, the idea, the issue, the initiative that you're wanting to do, then it's a win-win. You've helped someone in their career and you've achieved the corporate outcome. Perfect. What more could you want?
Fantastic, Dan. Some really important takeaways for those of you that have either joined us live or watching at some point in the future on the recording. It's been an absolute pleasure, Dan. If people want to get in touch with you to learn more about what you do, would LinkedIn be the best place to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm sure if you're not already connected with Dan, you can change that in a second. Thank you ever so much, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure. Those of you that have joined us live, thank you ever so much. I know we've overrun, but hopefully that was a positive for you, because it's such an important topic. Communicating, listening and coaching, such important skills and attributes of any great leaders out there. But thank you ever so much, Dan. Whatever you're up to for the next rest of the week, hope you have a fantastic one. And of course, those of you that enjoying the Leadership in 15 LinkedIn live sessions, look out for our next one next week, where I'll be joined by another fantastic guest. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you.